Well, hello there. Brian Goulet here of GouletPens.com, and it is episode number 217 of Goulet Q&A. And it's a little bit interesting this week because we have the 4th of July smack in the middle of the week. I normally record these Q&As on Wednesday afternoon. I'm actually recording this on Tuesday afternoon, which means that my weekly recap of what's happened this week gets a little challenging when 3 days before this video publishes have not even happened yet. So I will do my best as far as what I think is going to come, but things are just going to get a little wacky because the holiday in there. So here in the US, we're closed on the 4th. But it's always weird having a holiday right in the middle of the week. You know, it's like you don't quite fully come back to work and you have a day off, and yeah, it's kind of weird. Anyway, I'll take it anyway. So this past week we had my niece and nephew's birthday party. They were born like within a couple days of each other in different years. So they did like a birthday bonanza this weekend, and it was a lot of fun. I've been on my crazy diet, very restricted diet for a while, and I have been sticking to it. Only went off the rails for one afternoon when we were doing a walking food tour with our leadership team. You know, I deviated a little bit, but other than that, I've been completely strict on it, which was very difficult at a children's birthday party because there's cupcakes and just donut holes and sweets everywhere, and I have this like debilitating sweet tooth. Anyway, it was still really great to see lots of family, and it was a lot of fun. So Rachel and I are actually going to be off next week. We are going to a conference, a National Pastoral Ministers Conference. So we're involved in our singing, our choir at church, and we're going to this conference related to choir direction and all that kind of stuff. So should be an interesting experience. I've never been to anything quite like that, but it was kind of nice. So it's like a half like conference thing, half kind of getaway for me and Rachel. And actually this is the first like intentional time off that I've taken since we moved this business last year. I never really took any time off personally, other than like kids getting sick and taking care of Rachel and stuff like that. So I'm ready for a little bit of break. So that's gonna be kind of cool, but not gonna leave you hanging next week though, because I have a super special treat back in May, 2 months ago. Oh my gosh, 2 months ago. I went to see Nathan Tardif up in Massachusetts, and I shot a video interview with him. So you will get to see the one and only Nathan Tardif in video form Friday next week. That's when I'm looking to publish it. So get ready for that. It's a very interesting video. Nathan's an incredibly interesting person, and it might take a little bit of the mystique away from him. But anyway, it was a very fascinating trip, and I'm happy to share some of that with you. Product-wise, let's talk about a couple things. So let's see here. We had the Opus 88 Fantasia and Picnics come in. Now, I already talked about these in Right Now on Monday, so I won't get too deep into them, but I did want to show them off a little bit. We already had the Coloro, which is a combination of ebonite and resin. All these pens are eyedropper pens. And then we had the Coloro Demonstrator, which we're just calling the Demonstrator because it's a larger pen and looks very kind of different. We're out of stock of these, but we're going to be getting more in soon. Got them on order. And then we had the Picnic, which I had samples of it, and I've been showing it in Right Now in Q&A for a bit. We didn't actually get our full shipment in until last week, so we have some of those now. And so I just brought the purple one because that one is like, wow. That one and the teal one are just like, woo. Really, really good. And then we have these really cool Fantasia pens. Very, very hip, very kind of retro. I'm thinking like late 70s, early 80s. This really has that like Sesame Street kind of vibe, you know? I have the red one here that I've inked up. Jovo Nibs, they write really, really well. Very interesting pens. Very like fit and finish on these pens is really good. We did have one little issue that I talked about in Right Now on Monday morning, where the finial on the top on this Fantasia pen, because it has this interesting mechanism where you can kind of unlatch it on the back, and that's how you actually can operate the plunger. The eyedropper plugs up the pen. You can do it with your fingers, but it has this little tool built into the cap of the pen, which is kind of a novelty. But if it's stuck, if the plunger is stuck, it can actually like unscrew the cap instead of the plunger. But you can tighten it up. You can tighten up that cap, and we've been going back and forth with Opus 88. They've been very responsive. They're very much like we warranty everything. We want to, really make sure that things are buttoned up. So they're going to take some steps to further kind of reinforce and look at some gluing options and stuff like that they can do at the factory to help reinforce that. And that's just really cool with a newer manufacturer that we're working with, to receive that feedback from you all or notice something ourselves, give them that feedback, have them be super responsive. I mean, they're in Taiwan. They're like clear in the other time dimension from where we are. It's like nighttime over there when it's daytime over here and all that, but they've still been really on top of things and addressing our concerns. So that's pretty cool to see a company stand behind their stuff that much. So, we got those Fantasias and all that, and they're pretty cool. Another cool thing that came back, so Keras Customs, we used to carry their orange color, which is a really striking, bright orange color. They had trouble kind of getting a consistent anodizer to do the orange, so they actually discontinued it a year and a half ago or so, but they found a new anodizer and they brought it back, and it looks to be the exact same color that it used to be. So that's really encouraging. So Keras Customs orange is back. And then we got in our Piniter Honeycomb limited edition pens, and I just wanted to show them to you because they look pretty darn cool. So they come in this nice little box. I took the outer sleeve off already. It does have a little note in here to say that the pen is in the pen holder, because you open it up and you're like, where's my pen? Because the normal box, the pen would be sitting down here, but it's not. So it comes with a little paper card sampling here, and then it comes with this $75 value leather pen case, hard pen case, which is pretty nice to carry the pen in. And then the pen inside is right here. Now we had a sample of this for a while. Let me get in on that. So we had a sample of this up for a while, and it was kind of a prototype. So if it will want to focus, it's hard to get it to focus on a clear, shiny object. There we go. So it's really cool. I don't know how they make this pen, but it is, it's a honeycomb pattern. It's literally holes throughout the material, and it's like hexagonal pattern. And, that's just kind of cool. So it's a limited edition pen. They are numbered. They only have, how many of these do they have? 888 of them worldwide. I got number 42 right here in my hands. And you can pick one up for yourself if you are so inclined. It's really interesting to see the things that Dante Del Vecchio is coming up with at Piniter. But that was kind of cool to see that come in. So if you're interested in that, you can check it out on gouletpens.com. What else we got? I gotta check my notes because there's just so much to keep up with. Got Retro 51 in, the roller balls, so had pretty good response to that, and that's really encouraging. We're still waiting on the Buzz and the P51, Mustang, which we have on our site. But anyway, I just want to show you some of these. I will say, without revealing too much, we are working on some custom Retro 51 stuff that I am pretty darn excited about. So this is just a little sampling of some of the ones that we have. The cursive one is pretty cool. The Dr. Gray one seems to be the one that everybody's excited about, and it glows in the dark too. It's pretty cool. Really nice roller balls. Very fun company to work with, and I can't wait to share some of the stuff that's in the works, but I'm not gonna hype it up too much. We also had Rhodia 2019 planners, which freaks me out because I guess we're in July, and that's when planners usually start to come out for the following year. I'm just not ready. I'm not ready to start thinking about 2019. It's like, whatever, I'm still getting used to 2018 and it's half over. But anyway, we have Rhodia web planners for 2019. We already had Lloydstrom a couple weeks ago, so it's like, everybody's more on the ball than I am, I guess. I'm still getting used to the year that we're in. And then some other things to kind of look forward to that we have coming up. We got Robert Oster Shake and Shimmy. We may launch those before this video comes out, so they might already be on our site, as well as Robert Oster Smokescreen. So the Robert Oster Shake and Shimmy, I've used those a little bit. I'm sorry I don't have swabs or anything to show you, but I did play with them a bit. They're really, really highly, not sheening, but shimmering inks. So think the Nemesine inks or the Organic Studios, that much shimmer in them. It's really a lot, and it's gonna be higher maintenance on your pens as a result. But if you really like that high sheen and stuff like that and high shimmer, those are gonna be the ones for you. And they have a nice rose gold color in there too, which looks really, really good. So you should check those out. Robert Oster also came out with a new color called Smokescreen, so we got that as well. And then soon, I don't know if it's going to be this week or next week, we'll have the Visconti Homo sapiens evolution, which is not replacing the regular Homo sapiens, the volcano one. It's a whole new pen. It's not like, I know with evolution, it seems like it's like taking over the other one, and it's, no, the other one's going to stay. Don't worry about that. The evolution is just a new one. They're changing up the nib. It's got this crazy skeleton nib on it, and should be kind of interesting. So be on the lookout for that. Should be pretty cool. All right, I have, how many questions for you this week? 7 questions, one of which I borrowed from last week, because I don't know what happened last week. I was just off my game, but I rambled a lot and talked for a long time and skipped over one of my questions, but I'm gonna answer it today. All right, so let's just get right into it, shall we? All right, starting off, PedroHo30 on Instagram is always confusing for me, the plated nibs. I mean, for example, what is PVD coated nib of the Lamy Lx? Is it palladium or is it gold? That's a great question. Okay, I'm just checking my battery. Okay, we're good. Great question. A lot of people get confused about these different coatings and different things like that. So I'll explain that a little bit for you. PVD is a particular type of coating that's for black nibs. That's the only one that I'm aware in the fountain pen world that it's used. It doesn't have to be a black coating from what I understand. I'm not a scientist. I'm stepping outside of my complete area of expertise here. But that's what you see on the Lux nibs, it's a PVD. That's the black coating on the nib itself. So it's not palladium or gold or anything like that. It stands for physical vapor deposition. And you can look that up on Wikipedia. But basically it's a method of applying a finish to metals that increases its durability, abrasion resistance, and environmental, it has a better environmental impact than like electroplating or painting or something like that. There's other black coatings that you can have on nibs, including black oxide, or it's sometimes known as bluing. And that's when the metal, you're actually oxidizing the coating of the metal, the outer coating, to increase its corrosion resistance and stuff like that. From what I understand, PVD is a more durable method than black oxide. You can also do ruthenium plating, which is an electroplating that uses ruthenium, which is a metal. It ends up being more of kind of a smoky gray color, not quite as black as a black oxide or a PVD. So from what I understand, all of these they're fairly durable, but I think PVD is kind of like the most durable of them. There's other common coatings that you can see on nibs is either rhodium or gold plating, which usually I think that's going to be electroplating that those are done in, but not every manufacturer discloses their exact process. That's just kind of my understanding of it. The gold plating is almost always aesthetic because gold is the softest of any of these metals that we're talking about here. And rhodium is usually aesthetic, but rhodium is very durable too, so there is a durability component that gets added to rhodium. Usually what you see with rhodium plating is you see rhodium coating that's used for trim, like metal trim. Obviously you can do gold plating as well. Typically you'll have something like a brass or maybe a steel, but it's usually brass hardware like trim, something like that, and then you'll have the plating over top of that to give it its color, and then you'll have the nib itself, which the nib is usually going to be stainless steel or gold, and you can do plating over top of any of those. So you can do a PVD or a black oxide coating or something if you want a black coating over top of usually a steel nib, but it can sometimes be gold too. I think specifically of like the Aurora Talentum, right? And the Aurora 88 Demonstrator with the black trim. Those are gold nibs but have black coatings on them. So if it's really important to you, we usually try to find out what it is. We'll often put it in the product description as to what type of coating it is, if we can find that out and if we know. A lot of times we have to ask manufacturers because they don't just openly advertise that. So Lamy does have palladium platings on their pens sometimes. It usually gives it like a silver color. They have that on some of their higher end pens because palladium, it's a silver color, but it falls in the platinum family. So like palladium, rhodium, platinum, they're all in that kind of like precious metal kind of sphere. And so you might see some of that on some of their higher end pens. I'm thinking specifically like they have a Studio and they have a CP1 that are like a palladium or platinum plated pens. So it really just depends on what it is that they're doing, what look they're going for, and all that, what kind of durability they're going for. But hopefully that enlightens you at least a little bit, especially about PVD. All right, next question is from Thanks Left-Handed Musings 16 on Instagram. When I ordered a numbered fountain pen from you, how do you guys choose which number I get? Are they chronological in the warehouse and you grab the next available, or is it completely random? It's random most of the time, to be quite honest. Sometimes they're loosely chronological. The challenge is that we aren't usually getting all of the stock of whatever it is you see, especially if it's a lower priced item. If it's something that isn't an exclusive product, that means that anybody can have it and it could be sold worldwide. So thinking specifically like one that you might be familiar with is the Pilot Vanishing Point. Like they come out with a limited edition Vanishing Point every year. They release the number of pens that whatever year it is. So this year they'll have 2018 of them, but that's worldwide. We might get a handful out of the worldwide ones, and it may be sequential in its numbers, but oftentimes it's not. Typically what ends up happening with us, because they're fountain pens, with roller balls you can mix and match and be fine. Fountain pens though, there's different nib sizes and stuff to go in there. Maybe the Vanishing Point's a bad example because the limited editions, they always do with medium nibs. But with a lot of other pens, there's different nib sizes to take into account. And when they do them chronologically, how would you do that when you have mix and match numbers of nib sizes? So we might order heavy on extra fines and fines, not as heavy on broads, and so whatever sequence of numbers they come up with, if we only order, 3 broads and we order 7 extra fines, if they went even on their split, we're going to get more numbers and it's going to get mixed up and all that kind of stuff. So it's just really, really difficult for us to be able to predict what we're going to get. And you got to think too, like it's got to come from the manufacturer. And then if they're selling worldwide, which a lot of times these limited edition things end up being worldwide, the manufacturer sends it out to different continents, different distributors around the world. And then those distributors are sending it to different retailers. And then the retailers got to send it out to the customers. So it's like, it's got to stay together, lumped chronologically throughout all of that process in order for us to be able to say, yes, we have numbers 43 through 87. But usually it's not going to be like that. It's going to be like we have numbers 1, 8, 7, 16 through 18, 45 through 47, 65, and 97 through 104. And that's kind of the smattering that it ends up being. And it's so random and that we can't even like reliably offer anything. And even then to do that, we would have to receive it, look at every single number that we have, catalog it in some kind of database. And then as they sell and we ship them, mark off what it is that we're shipping and sending out. It's a lot of extra work to do that, especially for something where we can't even choose the number. So honestly, most of the time, it's not even worth it. It's not a value to you all because we're not getting to choose the numbers and we can't offer you anything reliably that you want. But also it's a lot of extra time and a lot of extra work that we would have to build that into the cost, which we usually don't, because who's going to want to pay a premium for possibly the option of maybe getting to choose the number that you want? It just kind of stinks. So the only ones that we've really been able to offer that before have been ones where they're either in such limited quantities that it's easy for us to advertise, like Namikis or things that just, are tracked like that. Like I'm talking like multiple thousands of dollar pens. Oftentimes manufacturers and stuff know that collectors really care about the number, and that adds value and can make or break them buying the pen or not. So that's where it's tracked a little more carefully. As you come lower down in price, there's not the economies of scale to be able to track all that kind of stuff. I didn't use that term right, economies of scale. It's not practical, not economical, that's what I meant to say. And then for us, like when we've had something like the Opera Master Luna, the Visconti Opera Master Luna, like that was a numbered limited edition. It was an exclusive. We have all of them. So yes, that we can actually track the number. And so we do in those instances, but it's really only like specific pens that hit a certain price threshold where that really starts to matter a lot. So we build that into our process, and we have a good chunk or an exclusive on all of it. That ends up being not that many pens, quite honestly. So most of the time, it's just you get what you get and you don't throw a fit, as I tell my kids. And we'll try to do it whenever we can, but it's rare enough that if we are going to be able to offer that, that we'll advertise that we're doing it that way. So what you can do, for you, if you're like really interested in a certain number of something, you can always ask our team. I can't always guarantee that they can honor it. And honestly, if it's completely random smattering and it's like a $40, $50 pen, I don't think your chances are going to be very good. But you can always just say in your order comments, like, hey, I would love it if I could have numbers 88, 47, 45, whatever, if you can make that happen. If it's like a total deal breaker for you, then I would reach out to my customer care team ahead of time and try and work that out. But if it's something that's just a preference thing, just leave it in your order comments and we will try to honor it if we can. If you're like, hey, I love the number 8, can you get me something with the number 8 in it? That might be a little easier than if you're going for like a specific number. But we'll do what we can. It's just not always so easy. Cool. All right, Elizabeth H on Facebook says, I'm planning on buying the shark pens for my daughters. Ta-da! My youngest in particular has been nagging me for them, but I've never used or seen a hooded nib before. Only been in fountain pens for a year. Is there anything I need to watch out for or any special ways I should clean them or fill them? They'll be using them for pleasure and to correct their work for school. I think that's cool. It's a very, very fun pen. I think that any pen that's this kind of fun and interesting for for the new fountain pen user in all of us can be a lot of fun. So they actually make this pen, just full disclosure, they make this pen in a non-hooded version. You may see that floating around on the internet a little bit. We opted for the hooded version because we liked it. It has an extra fine nib, and the hooded I actually like better because it keeps the nib from drying out as quickly. So I actually think it's better for using it for kind of the casual pen user because it'll stay inked up a little bit. So the hooded nib on this is kind of interesting from most other pens. It's we don't have that many hooded nibs. The Lamy 2000 I'm thinking is one, and I can't really think of many others that we have currently. So this is kind of interesting that there's just not that many out there. It's not unusual for you to be in this for a year and not have any experience with a hooded nib. But really, it's kind of similar to just any other nib. You just aren't seeing all of what's happening. So it's a longer, kind of skinnier nib that's happening in there. But really, you write with it the same as you normally do. You clean it the same as you normally do. I will say it's not like super easy to disassemble. So if you're using really shimmery, shining inks and stuff like that are kind of tough to clean out sometimes, just build that into your cleaning time. You're not going to easily be able to disassemble it to get at the innards. So what I do, and of course I eyedropper converted mine. This is the one that I used in Q&A last week or 2 weeks ago. I can't remember, but I eyedropper converted my my shark pen, and it's been holding strong ever since. So in case you're curious if it's eyedropper convertible, I've been carrying it around in my backpack with reckless abandon, and it has not leaked one drip. So that definitely a success on the eyedropper front, but I can go ahead and disassemble it. I just need to make sure I don't dump ink everywhere. Let me put it in my little pen holder here. Ta-da. Okay, so if I am wanting to clean this pen, of course the pen comes with a converter if you haven't eyedroppered it like I'd have here, but you can use a bulb syringe like this. This is the best cleaning tool for your cartridge converter pens, period. Just the best tool. You can pick these up. We have them on our site, of course, but you can pick them up at a drugstore, or if you have a baby, you'll get at least 1 or 2 of these at the hospital. Not the easiest way to acquire these, but that can it'd be one way to get it. But anyway, so you just fill this thing up with water, suck it up like that, stick it in the back, flush the water through, and honestly, like one flushing most of the time will get it. And then just take a paper towel or something like that, touch it to the nib, and that will help to draw out anything additional that's in there. If you see additional stuff in there, just keep flushing it. You're good. That bulb syringe makes it super easy to flush. So that's what I recommend. Other than that, there's really nothing else crazy that you need to do. I just took this question loosely as a way to show off my shark pen and talk about how it's still eyedropper convertible, which is great. So that's about it. Yeah. Other than that, I just hope you have a good time with the pen. All right, let's talk about some troubleshooting, shall we? This is from TC Bradford on Facebook. When I change nibs and pens, not nib units, but just the nib, like yanking the nib out of the pen, do I need to adjust where the top end of the feed lines up on the nib, or should I just fully seat the feed and nib as far as they will go in? Okay, so I have an Edison Nouveau Premier Delphinium, one of my favorite pens in history. I just love the way this pen looks. So what you're talking about here is the feed here. You're talking about how should that feed really match up to where it touches kind of those corners of the nib. Okay, now there's a lot of different nib designs. I just showed you the Shark pen, which is a completely different nib design. But generally speaking, this is what it's going to look like. The feed is going to come up here. It's going to match almost to these wings here of the nib. And that's more or less the position you want. It's not, as I look closer at it, it's not actually going all the way up to the corners. Pens like this Edison here, a bunch of other Yovo and Box specifically, if they're the manufacturers, they will seat very kind of consciously into the pens. Twisbys are that way. Lamys are easy because they just slide on and off. It's you push them all the way down. There's a number of manufacturers where they do go in a very specific way and they'll have a very positive stop. That's not always the case though. So I can't make a blanket statement to say, yeah, you just shove them all the way in there and it'll just kind of work out. You know, the best thing for you to do really is before you go yanking nibs out of your pens, just be aware that when you start doing that, you're kind of like hacking it, right? You're taking it apart just like if you were to, you know, buy a piece of electronic equipment and you took the casing off and you started poking around and pulling stuff out. You know, you're disassembling it. So the best thing to do is to take notice or even take a picture of what it looks like before you take it out. You know, so just use your cell phone or whatever, take a picture of the feed, the nib, and just kind of make sure you see how it's seated in there. That way you have that for reference. So if you go to put it back in, you're like, oh man, this isn't going in like I thought it should be. You have something to reference it. You know, a lot of times you can find pictures online. We try to put pictures. We don't put pictures of like every pen and every orientation. So you may get lucky and find some pictures online of that specific pen you're working on, especially if it's like a newer pen that's kind of popular and there's a bunch of bloggers and YouTube videos and stuff that people have done this kind of stuff. You can maybe use that as reference. But otherwise, just kind of catalog your own journey as you're taking it apart, and you should be able to more or less get an idea. But a lot of pens will have the ability to have kind of a positive stop in there. You'll just, you know, as you're doing it and as you learn your own pens, you'll learn which ones you can do that on and which ones that you cannot. And yeah, I think most of the time, to kind of close this question out, most of the time what you end up with as kind of a risk is not actually putting it in too far, but it's not putting it in far enough. I know specifically the tolerances that we have on these Premiers, if you don't put it in all the way, the nib could be sticking too far out and then it could crush into the top of the cap as you go to put it back on. So ones like this, yeah, you want to make sure you get it seated all the way down in there. That can happen maybe on some other pens too. So that's more the risk than it is shoving it in too far, unless you're really just cramming it in and then you get it stuck and it can be kind of a mess. So your mileage will vary. So I'll say do your own research, consult a pro if you have questions, and taking your pen into your own hands, my friend. All right, got a couple of business questions for you here. But before I do, I'm gonna take a little sip of water because my throat's just kind of dry right now. Sorry. From Sharon L on Facebook, one feature that I missed from Brian's earlier videos is demonstrating products close up. That's one of my favorite parts of Right Now, until you got the new camera. Even though it's better than it was in the beginning, it still seems like it takes the camera longer to focus. And is there any way to make the Right Now longer? I enjoy them way more than Q&A and watch it while I'm unwinding at work. That's cool. I'm glad you're enjoying Right Now, Sharon. So this is some feedback I've been hearing. You know, we did get some new camera equipment. Previously what we were using, and right now, was my cell phone. So not a super long-term sustainable platform because like I don't have infinite space on my phone, and then if I'm not here, we can't record anything. So we had to have a different solution. Quite frankly, we have been so busy shooting that we've not had a ton of time to learn our new equipment. Andy's been a great sport, learning on the fly and not letting the fact that she has not mastered the new equipment slow her down from bringing you great content. So, I give Andy huge props for taking that on. It can be kind of, you're putting yourself out there when you publish stuff out there to the internet, to the world, and it can sometimes slow you down if your production quality is not perfect. I know there's a certain level we need to get to for you all to enjoy it and all that kind of stuff, and we're working on that. So we're getting there. We're trying to get better. It does not help that I move really fast, and I don't like slow down. I'm like, well, whatever. As long as we get the video and we get audio, let's keep rolling. Anyway, so Andy and I have been talking about this, about right now and the formats and the timing. We've been working with Margaret, we've been working with Colin. We're kind of like our little video kind of brainstorm team there. And so we have been thinking about that, the timing of right now and what it's used for and all that kind of stuff. And actually, one thing we've been talking about more recently is coming with like a more kind of middle of the road format. I empathize with you, Sharon, that I feel the same way. It's like I kind of miss doing like the more full video review style, not like the 20 to 22 minute stuff that I used to do where it was like all one take and I would just kind of ramble. Something a little more focused, a little more polished, but something kind of in between some of the snapshots and the quick looks like we've done before, and the super long form and Q&A is just, I just babble. And Q&A right now is kind of locked into what it is because at least time-wise, because we shoot that in the morning. Basically, like I come into work, around 8:15 or so, get settled in for like 5 minutes. We shoot for like 10, 15 minutes, and then we have like morning meetings, and we are running the company. So we have that window of time in the morning to shoot right now. So if we were to try to make it half an hour, it just wouldn't be sustainable. Plus, we're trying to get it up in a couple hours. So exporting time and all that kind of stuff, like. The reason we have to shoot Q&A so much earlier is because not only shooting time, but the editing time, exporting, and then you got to upload it to YouTube. Everything takes longer the longer the video is. So it just adds a lot of time. So we have to build like literally an entire full day of buffer into shooting Q&A because of how long the videos are. So it wouldn't be sustainable for us to shoot right now in the schedule that we have of a couple times a week if we were to make it much longer. Even still, that wasn't the point. It was to be quick. It was to be very brief, consumable within a portion of your lunch hour kind of thing. That was the idea of right now. That said, so we're looking at this format of doing more of a longer form, maybe a 7 to 10 minute video review of a pen. So for example, I think the first one we're looking to do is the Visconti Vertigo. And so that we're going to try to have up in the next couple of weeks. So Andy and I have been talking about, camera setups and stuff. We're looking at doing a dual cam again. So having the front camera like we have here with Q&A, so a face shot, and then having an overhead camera that shoots down that'll show some details of the pen, and then I can show writing samples and talk about how the pen writes in more detail, because that's something I've always felt I've kind of skimped on when I've done pen videos. So thinking about that, looking at the formatting, but trying to come up with a way that like Colin can help, pull a bunch of the technical specs off the website, help me frame up the video planning, because that takes a little while, and then shoot the stuff, and then Andy, and then getting the B-roll, those really, really close-up shots afterwards. So we're in the process of kind of figuring out a rhythm. I feel like once we do, we're going to start to rock and roll on the style of video that I think you're kind of talking about here, and we're going to look to kind of build those in a little more regularly. So we'll have a good rhythm of like, kind of offbeat, fun videos like, Lydia's Left Out videos, have some shorter ones, like the snapshots that Andy's done, like on the Traveler's Pen and the TWSBI Precision. We'll have the Q&As going for the foreseeable future, and then we have Right Now in there a couple of times, and then we're gonna have a really good rhythm in there for videos. Of course, we're always open to feedback, so I love that you asked this question and that you are enjoying that. I'm hoping that like somewhere in that rhythm that we can find a nice happy medium for you. Cool. All right, this next question is going to be a doozy. So let me drink up a little bit on this one. Cucumber water, it's good stuff. Okay, this next question I wanted to take not only because I think it'll be helpful for you, but I think it'll be helpful for my team. So I'm going to go into detail on this one, and I hope you enjoy it. Leah S from Facebook asked, what does the process look like from start to finish of bringing a new product to the website? I thought this was super interesting. Anyone who's in the pen business who might be watching this right now can probably empathize a lot with everything I'm talking about. But some of this is going to be specific just to the fact that we got 40 or more people on our team at any given time these days. It's just way more involved than you might think, especially when you have that many people involved in the operation. So part of it is there's a lot of my own team that knows really well certain parts of this process, but I don't know if I've ever really sat down and talked through the entire thing. So that's what we're going to do right now. Okay, first one is we have to identify demand, which comes from you, perhaps our customers. We have an internal Slack channel, so we use Slack, the communication tool that we have, and we created one called New Product Suggestions, and we have the majority of our team is on that channel. And so anywhere, whether it's through phone, email, live chat, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, wherever, in person, real life, dream it up, see it on the internet somewhere, we'll put new item suggestions into that channel for everybody to see. That way, if there's a theme that comes up, something comes up a lot, we can comment it on each other and we can get a kind of a gauge. It's a very collaborative way, just kind of throughout our day, that we can all communicate about new products and help to recognize kind of what the pulse is out there in the community. So that's one thing that is really cool, because we're very engaged grassroots, kind of talking to you all, and that's been from the very beginning, and even in this size, we've had to adapt how we do that, but still very important to us that we do that. We're sometimes given advance notice on new releases, kind of confidentially from manufacturers, so it might not be something that's suggested from the community because you might not know that it exists yet. So sometimes we get advance notices, whether it comes from like a vendor that comes and visits us physically in person, or sometimes they'll email us, or we'll kind of accidentally discover something in the corners of the internet and ask our manufacturers about it. So that might be one way we can identify it. Those get a little tougher because then we can't make it public yet. So we have to have we don't have your kind of engagement as a component for it, and we have to kind of use our experience to draw upon there. And then sometimes we can just stumble upon new brands, or we can find new things, or we come up with ideas and approach brands and kind of dream up stuff. That also gets challenging because then it's not even as tangible. We have to kind of create it, and then we're kind of more guiding what it even is. Any of those ways we can kind of start with that initial kind of identification process. We have a product leadership team, which consists of me, Rachel, our director of operations, Sam, our inventory manager, Christian, our media manager, Margaret, and then our customer care manager, Drew. So kind of the major heads of everybody who's involved in either like the manufacturer vendor side or on the customer side of things. The only leaders that we don't have in that meeting is HR, and then our fulfillment folks, because they're dealing more with logistics, and it's not as much deciding the product. So we meet weekly to discuss things that we're considering carrying, and it's one of our most dynamic meetings we have. We call it a new product strategic meeting, and it's usually an hour to an hour and a half every week, because new products are that important and that much worth discussing, because it can impact kind of a good portion of our schedules each week. So we discuss that. Once we make a decision, there's always information that's needed from our distributor or a manufacturer. So we have to kind of track down, either call, email, text, whatever, get info on release dates, nib size availability, product codes, material options, pricing, technical details, copy, you name it. If we can get stock images, we can. If we need to get samples ahead of time so we can photograph or do weights and measurements and all that kind of stuff, there's a lot of detail that goes in once we decide, okay, yes, we do want to carry this product. A lot of times we have to do some kind of sales projections, because it's like, okay, at the initial launch, how many of each nib size do we want to have? How many of each color do we want to have? Or whatever it might be. It can be kind of challenging to figure all that stuff out. So we gather as much of that information as we can, and then try to estimate initial demand so that we can place an order to get the products from our supplier. Then what we have to do is we have to list the products on our site. We have to have all the proper technical information, which can sometimes be quite a challenge to get, especially because a lot of the information that we have is more detailed than our manufacturers provide to us. Even things like specific weights and measurements of grips and, the length of it, posted, unposted, all that kind of stuff. It's paper and stuff like that, line ruling and width and weight and all that kind of stuff. We have to track all that down. Often we have to do a lot of our own measurements, which we really can't do until we get the products in. So if ever you see a new product listed on our site and it's got like half the technical information on it, that's because we literally don't have the information. We need to physically get the final products in our hand, and then we're like quickly getting all those measurements in, putting them up on the website before we launch the product, or sometimes maybe we don't wait. Depends on how important we feel that technical information is. We have to do with things like overall package weight, grip measurements, ink capacity, like stuff like that. We do our own specific measurements for a lot of that stuff, and some of that's needed. Then we have all of our comparison tools and things like that. So we have our nib nook. If it's a new pen that we're carrying, we have to ink it up, and we have to write with every single nib if it's a new nib that we've seen. Sometimes there's generic ones, like at this point, the Premier. If we come up with a new color of Premier, we're not going to do a different nib. For example, if we know it's like a generic Yovo nib and it's used the same thing on the Monograppa, for example. So like they've got a number 6 nib on their Fortuna, and they also have number 6 nib on the, I'm trying to think of another Monograppa that's coming out. I was like, there's another one that's coming out, but I can't talk about it yet. That's the first one that came to mind. Copper Mule, okay, that's also a Fortuna. It's a bad example. Still, if we know that it's the same nib and it's used on 2 different models, but literally same nib and housing and everything, we'll just use the same model and nib anyway. But we gotta know and keep track of all that stuff. If it's a new model, like size of pen, we gotta take a picture overhead of standard size for the pen plaza. Because that's a tool that we use to compare sizes of pens. It's taken a very specific orientation so that we can do that. If it's an ink, we have to put it into our swab shop. We have to think about doing samples and all that kind of stuff. Nearly everything that we have has to be photographed. Sometimes we'll kind of get lucky and get provided stock images, like TWSBI does a pretty good job with, images on white that look kind of close to ours. Sometimes we're just out of luck, and either we don't get the images we need, or the images look so different from everything else we have, we feel we need to take our own images for consistency's sake. So sometimes we can do that in advance with samples, sometimes not. A lot of times the samples we get ahead of time are not like the final version. So we don't want to photograph it in great detail and put up on the site because it may change a little bit, from the actual release that we get. And then we have to communicate everything throughout the whole team. So all of the details, every aspect of the products, we try to get up on the website so that we can all reference that collectively, but it's not always possible, especially if we either don't have the information or if it's not public yet. We can build things on the back end and then share it with each other before we make something public on the site, but usually we're still scrambling for technical information at that point, so that gets kind of tricky. We have to create the products on our site with all the technical information and all the pictures. At that point, we're working on media promotion planning, which might require writing some copy, especially like product descriptions and anything if we're looking to publish it in our newsletter or create a blog post about it or an Instagram post or whatever. We got to come up with copy and pictures and kind of how many times are we going to post it, where, and how much stock are we going to get, how much stock do we think we're going to get. There's a whole strategy behind all of that because, for example, the Opus 88 demonstrator, we ordered a bunch. They sold through really fast. So we might have intended to put them in the newsletter for this week, but if they sold out, we're like, we're not going to put a sold out product in the newsletter. That's got to go. And so we got to have a plan, but then be super fluid based on demand and all this kind of stuff. Or something might come out and be like, oh man, this completely got overshadowed last week because this other thing came in and launched at the same time. Let's give this more promotion here. Let's do an Instagram post. Let's do whatever. So there's all that to go on. They can require copy, pictures, video, number of different channels. There's a whole, the media team is busy scrambling with that on a regular basis. Room has to be made physically on the shelves and be communicated with our fulfillment team about how to actually receive it, check it off, pull it, pack it, and if sometimes there's special considerations. I'm thinking like when we got Colorverse in, it made it fine to us, but then there was kind of some room inside the package and sometimes the internals was getting kind of banged up by those bottles in there. So we had to pack it in a special way and we had to communicate it with Colorverse, and so we got to plan that stuff out too. Products have to be created in our accounting system. time. So we have to not only put it on the website, but then we have to map everything into our accounting system so that when things are purchased, we can go through and we have the cost of goods in there and everything comes through in terms of where it's purchased, and we can map everything so we can do proper accounting. Something that's often overlooked, but is a very important part of the inner workings of the business. Once we actually physically get everything in, so we've ordered it, we've been prepping, doing all this stuff, strategy, pictures, then we physically get the shipment in, and we're communicating like on a regular basis. And sometimes we get tracking in advance, sometimes we don't. So every day is kind of like a, oh, surprise, this arrived. Then it's like, oh my gosh, we weren't going to talk about that till next week. But you know what? If we have it this week, we could totally talk about it this week. Or, oh man, we were going to talk about it in the newsletter this week, but it's been delayed. We don't have tracking. We have no idea when it's coming. So we'll bump that out, and we got to communicate all that. Customer care needs to ask tons of questions. Media team needs to ask tons of questions about that stuff. And so it's like we got to communicate thoroughly every single day about like, hey, this new thing that we thought was coming, is it actually coming? Is it coming? Is it coming? Is it coming? But once we physically get it in the building, it's crazy, right? Once we physically get it in the building, then we have to inspect everything for like damage, make sure that we got the right quantities, make sure that everything looks like we think it's supposed to look, because this has happened before. Sometimes we've had samples, or sometimes we've gotten a first shipment of something, and then when it comes again, something is tweaked or different or just whatever, especially if it's like we've given any kind of feedback, hey, it should be packed better, it should be done, whatever, just making sure that it looks right. And if it's something that's like a new color, like even if it's a new color of TWSBI or something that's generally pretty reliable, we still, when we get it in, we're like, all right, before we do anything, either Drew or I go back there and we inspect the product. We look and we make sure that it matches the pictures. We have this whole, Drew and I came up with this whole like 30 item checklist for any new product that comes in the building to check through every single little detail of it to make sure that it is as we have been advertising it before we give the go ahead to launch anything for sale. We check all that kind of stuff and make sure that it's all good. Then we communicate as a team to plan to launch it based on when we're staffed properly and when we feel that we can best serve you all based on the demand, the complexity of the product. Sometimes we'll get a huge shipment of something that arrives midday on a Friday, and we're like, a lot of our teams hit their hours at that point and they're like knocking off, going home for the weekend, and we're like, it would not be wise to launch, this really hot product at 3 o'clock on a Friday, because if people have questions about it or want to update their order to add it over the weekend or whatever, it's just going to create a burden and we're not going to be able to service you all very well. So we may choose to hold that until the following week, and if we have a really crazy weekend, we might not want to launch it on Monday. We might want to wait till Tuesday, but then if it's got to hit the newsletter and all this kind of stuff, all these different considerations to be made, and we communicate that pretty much on a daily basis based on whatever it is that's going to be launching. Once we get a good plan there, then we're good. And we go like, okay, let's make it live. Then we start selling it, and then we start shipping it out to you, and it's on its way to you. Woo! So, all that said, we have, 3,700 plus products on our site, and we're launching somewhere around 120 to 150 SKUs a month. SKUs, that's individual like product codes, individual products. So this process is happening fairly constantly, the different stages, simultaneously we're launching all these different things with ever-changing timelines and variables. And there's some things that are supposed to launch today, other things that are going to be 3 weeks from now, and could be at any stage of this thing that we're talking about here. And this is all while like just normal business is happening as we're selling things that we've been selling for some time. So this whole like new product thing, all of this is kind of happening over top of all the regularly offered products that we do and regular promotion and kind of evergreen type of videos and education that we put out. So it makes for a very vibrant, very interesting experience, but nonetheless, it's a heck of a lot of fun. We love doing it, and it's an important part of what we do. And as we've gotten, more involved in the pen community over the years, it's been a really exciting part to be even more influential in some of the products that may come out, having more opportunities for exclusives and designing things ourselves. It's been really cool, but it is very involved, very time consuming, and hopefully this makes you appreciate a little bit of the behind the scenes of what goes on. But the thing I will say is I feel like as crazy as this process is, especially to communicate it as quickly as we do to as many people as we have in our team, just to interact with you all and be able to do it for you, it's so worth it because the genuine enthusiasm and the passion that's in this community for new stuff just keeps it so exciting for us around here. And I mean, I've been doing this for 9 years now, and I still get just as excited about new stuff that comes in now as I did back in the day. And it doesn't matter if it's a $4,000 pen or a $4 shark pen. I just freaking love the passion that's behind all this stuff and being involved in the community, and my team feels the same way. So hopefully now you have a little better appreciation for it, and hopefully everybody on my team that's watching this, you can have appreciation for the other members of the team because there's so many moving parts and pieces, and you all rock it every day. Love being a part of this. Thank you all very much, and I'm glad that you asked that question. Yeah, thank you, Leo. All right, to close it out for this week, I got a personal question from Stuart Jackson 612 from Instagram. As a sort of follow from Brian's post on weird places to fill a pen, what's the weirdest place you or your team has had to clean their pens or most embarrassing ink stain they've ever suffered? Okay, so I asked my team this, and I asked them like late yesterday, so don't know how many responses I get, but I'll kind of read them more real time because I forgot to compile them ahead of time, but I still have it in Slack, so I'll get to it. I'll start out with mine. So I've cleaned my pens in numerous hotel bathrooms, public restrooms, at like work conferences and stuff like that. Didn't even think twice about it. I guess that's kind of weird, but I don't even sweat it at all. Mine probably has not been so much the weird places that I've filled my pens, but it's been more like what I do when I fill and clean my pens, because I have on many occasions live streamed and answered like Q&A stuff on either Instagram Live or Periscope back in the day while I've been cleaning my pens. And I greatly enjoy that. I don't know, I feel like if I'm just gonna sit there and clean my pens anyway, I might as well make an event out of it. And I've had, over the years, thousands and thousands of people sit there and watch me clean my pens while I talk to them and answer questions at like 10 o'clock at night. It's just so cool. Like, I just think that's one of the coolest things about my pen cleaning experience. So I thought it was worth mentioning. Me personally, I've had very few ink stains in all my years of handling pens, other than just like little stains on the fingers every now and then. I got some stains here and there. It's nothing crazy, but I don't have any like super dramatic noteworthy stains. I do have a couple. So like the first day that I ever used a fountain pen, not my very first filling, it was my second filling I ever did. I dumped my bottle over and knocked over half. It was a Diamine 30 milliliter bottle, so it wasn't a huge volume, but I dumped half the contents out on my kitchen island. Thankfully it was a black, granite tile island top. So it didn't really stain anything. Could have turned out way worse, but that sticks out firmly in my mind. And then one time when I was ink sampling way back in the day, back in the garage days, I dumped the majority of a bottle of, I think, a Diamine ink in my lap while I was filling, but I just immediately threw it in the washing machine and it actually all washed out. Could never even tell that it happened. I think I may even still have those shorts, but yeah, that definitely happened. And then one time I left a pen in my pocket and washed my pants, and my pants were fine, but it stained Rachel's pajamas and she never lets me forget it. So that definitely happened. And then I wanted to pull up some of the feedback I got from my team because I did get some good ones. If you can just give me 1 second here to find their responses. Okay, so I did ask them. So Jeremy, our data analyst, said, at my previous job, my Lamy Safari managed to explode all over my hands during a meeting. Heart of darkness everywhere. Oh man. Adrian on our customer care team said, I tried to do a refill eyedropper conversion hack on a Pilot Varsity with no syringe or silicone grease and ended up with Qternity all over my hands, lap, countertop, paper. It was bad. Micah says, in my ink sampling days, I once poured 2 bottles worth of Yamabudo on my lap. So clearly I'm not the only one around here, and I'm sure you all have some very dramatic stories as well. And that leads me into the question of the week. I would love to hear your worst ink stain story. I've seen some very dramatic ones of pets that got into bottles of ink, ones where people have spilled it all over very nice carpets and other things like that. So I would love to hear or get a visual picture with words of your worst ink stain story in the comments. And then I do have a writing prompt for you this week. I'm keeping that train rolling. I would like for you to write a list of your top 5 favorite movies of all time. And if I had thought of it before just this second, I might have said what mine are. Oh gosh, I know I definitely have some favorites. I'll just try to come up with 5 kind of on the fly. I really love The Princess Bride. That one is kind of a classic for me. I love the Lego movie, the original Lego movie. Really, really good. Great memories. My son was at the perfect age, huge Lego fan when he saw that. So that one really resonated well with me. Gosh, I really should have thought about this more. Really should have thought about it more. I'm on the gun now. I can't remember things. I just literally can't remember some of my favorite movies of all time when I get in situations like this. Let's see. I feel like there should be some good dramas in here. I'm a huge fan of Steve Martin. I think he's a great comedian. The Jerk is a really great movie. I love the scene when he's on the beach, and they're singing. Oh, I can't remember the actress's name. Oh, she's such a good classic actress too. But where they were singing a serenade to each other and she starts playing the trumpet. Just, I freaking died during that movie. That's a really good one. That one's got to be up there for me. I'm into a lot of comedies and stuff. I don't like the real heavy ones. Anyway, 3 might be the most of what I'm able to come up with. Most of the movies I've seen recently have been like, cartoons with my kids and stuff like that. Oh gosh. Yeah, 3 is about all I have for you. I'm not going to leave you here all day. So anyway, maybe I'll think about that, do my own writing prompt this week. So if you are into anything that I talked about here, you can learn more about it on gouletpens.com. Thank you so much for liking, commenting, and subscribing on this video. We're going to be coming out with a lot more stuff. I'll be off next week, but we are not going to slow down. We got stuff to publish. I will not be in right now, but Drew is going to be running the show, and I don't know what kind of shenanigans he's going to be up to, but expect it to be great. Hope you have a wonderful week and a great weekend. Thanks so much for watching, and right on.